You know, we've been doing this for a really long time. One of us a lot longer than the other. And all of you decide who that is.
I've been doing this so long that when I started in this business, the governing documents and the bylaws had rules and restrictions for dinosaurs. Okay, carry on. Oh, you're gonna change that?
I'm getting fixed up here. And while I'm getting fixed up, I just want to say thanks to CAI for allowing us to speak. We know that there's a lot of people that are submitting to come out here. So look, Mitch and I, we have learned a lot. We certainly don't know everything, but there's a lot of things that we're going to...
Go ahead, talk.
Am I good?
Yeah, you're looking
It
good.
takes a second for this thing to
You're
turn on.
not just handsome, you're carry on.
Are we working? Okay, it'll turn on at some point, I'm sure. Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So what we want to do today really is just lay out what happened, why are we in the situation that we're in this world today, and then also what are the things that you should be doing, what are the things that maybe you shouldn't be doing when trying to collect from your homeowners. I can just use the handheld mic if we got problems.
I use a handheld. So, we're going to do a little housekeeping today, and that's up to you. I'm sorry if I jumped ahead.
No, not a problem. I was just saying, sorry, I'm glad we got this mic fixed up. I was just saying, we want to kind of lay out some ideas and things that we've learned over the years on what you should do, what you can do, what maybe you shouldn't do, some things to look out for, and then maybe some policies that you didn't know about. And that's kind of our goal. But to get this thing started, we are today releasing for the first time this book right here, written by Mitchell Drimmer himself. Where is it? There we go. The Art of Collections for Community Associations. If you don't have a copy, we can run one out to you. And if you want more copies for your staff, then they are at the bookstore.
They're at the bookstore, yeah.
And online too?
They will be on Amazon.com in a week or two.
Excellent.
We just released it. I don't want to release it on Amazon before it came out here.
Supposedly I've got a signed copy somewhere. I just haven't
I
seen it.
have it in my room. I signed it in blood. Okay. Let's do a little housekeeping here. We talked about the books. Blake wanted to let you know that if you have any questions, please do not stand on ceremony. Raise your hand. Let us know. We'll stop. We'll send over one of our colleagues to hold a microphone so that everybody can hear the question, and then we can respond to the answer. So let's start with the thesis of this particular class. And I wrote, it's not 2008 anymore. Things are different. So now I want to just briefly, because this is ancient history, go over with what happened in 2008. You had inadequate underwriting by the bank lenders. They don't care. And why did they care? Because of this. Your neighborhood bank had $1 billion or $500 million. That was the neighborhood's money. People deposited their money there. They had a fiduciary duty to protect that money. But so they sold it out in mortgages. Beautiful, that's what banks do. But then they packaged it up into mortgage-backed securities, collateralized debt obligations, and what happened was instead of enterprise having finance, enterprise was the plaything of finance. And that's what crashed the market. So you had over-exuberant buyers from investors, undercapitalized investors, people who were regular middle-class Joes who were making $75,000 a year, nice salary, but not to buy 5 condos or HOAs and expect to flip them. And when the music stopped and everybody had to sit down, well, there was nobody to collect from. You couldn't collect from anybody. Nobody was home. They all abandoned the units. Some of them rented out the units, but then some states like Florida, we'll talk about that, saw to it that it didn't work. And the worst part was the banks were not foreclosing. Because if they foreclosed, it means they'd have to increase their cash reserves, and there's no cash reserves to close, and they closed the bank. If they recognized and realized the debt, they closed the bank. There was nobody to collect from. and you had to wait for the bank to foreclose. Okay? That's it. It's not much of an association could do, and they hung out the associations to dry. But things are a little different today.
And if you don't mind, I'll just kind of jump in right here and talk about
I'd like you to do that for me.
So look, there's nobody in this room that doesn't know about 2008. And there's also nobody in this room that doesn't know what's been happening in the housing market over the last few years. I live in Salt Lake City, just south of Salt Lake actually. But a year or two ago, if you listed your house on Monday, you were getting 50 offers by Friday, and every single one of them was over asking price, a lot of cash offers. It was wild. That housing demand created price increase. That price increase has now helped us recover, and we were already on our way to recovery from 2008, but you look at what happened there, and even still today there's a pretty high demand. Most units have recovered on their home values, and so there's equity in the property. And that equity matters when we start to talk about collections within associations and how we can kind of use that equity in certain ways. And we'll get to that later on in the presentation, but understanding that there's equity in these units matters. If you look at the second bullet point there, banks are not lending money without adequate underwriting. I've got a sister who married a guy named Mike. I love Mike. Mike is new to this world of real estate, and they're trying to qualify for a house, and he calls me and he goes, Blake, they're asking for everything, man. I feel like I've got to drop my shorts, and then they're just checking everything. I said, you think that's bad? Wait till you ask for the school sample. There is so much that goes into underwriting now. They're not just willy-nilly giving out mortgages. And that's really important to us. We have to make sure that it stays the standard, and that's the way things are. And that matters, and it's totally different now than it was in 2008. The other thing is improved technology to keep track of delinquencies and understanding where the delinquencies are at. There was a report produced by CAI, 6% of units within associations are delinquent. However, when they're professionally managed, it's significantly less than that. And that's a nod to all the community managers in the room. I think that we work together, we collaborate well, and I think we've done a good job. And that percentage has gone from 6% down to even 3% in cases where they're being managed professionally. But the data and the technology to track that and understand where the communities are at, it really matters. And one thing that Mitch and I were discussing the other day, Florida for sure, but other markets, the insurance, it's just going through the roof, if you can even get it. So when you've got homeowners that are delinquent and there's not enough revenue coming into the association and insurance is going up and other costs are going up, this really does matter. Anyway, just a couple points that I want to throw up. Oh yeah, and then increased experience and awareness by board members and managers. I think that today's board member is a lot more educated than the board members of yesteryear. And that's a real benefit too, because we can work hand in hand with them. And I think that education is one of the most important things that we can do in this business with our board members.
One last point.
Oh, absolutely. So at PMI, we work with a lot of investors on the rental side. There's a lot less undercapitalized investors. They've got money to do the proper things. When you're undercapitalized and you can't get a tenant in the property, well, guess what? The assessments are one of the first things to go. And when that tenant is not paying and 30% of the association units are rentals, you can have big problems on your hand. So a lot of the investors that we work with today are institutional investors. There's a lot of capital behind it and coming into space.
All right. So now we're going to talk about actions a management company can take to compel an owner to pay their assessments in time. Well, folks, it all starts with the budget. You gotta have an honest budget. How many managers here, you can raise your hands if you like, have seen a board of directors start the budget process with the lower right-hand corner? This is the assessments. Let's build the budget to match the assessments so we don't have an increase. I'm seeing a lot of heads going like this. Well, that's not a way to build a budget. And if you build a budget like that, what are you going to get? You're going to get special assessments. And if you get special assessments, what are you going to get? You're going to get delinquencies. Because if somebody can plan and understand what they have to pay for the course of the year, then they will make that adjustment in their family finances and their family budget. But if you're gonna keep kicking them in the pants and say, hey, guess what, this month you gotta pay extra $500 or $1,000, 60% of American families live from paycheck to paycheck. So special assessments, to me, is a very unique way to torment families and to torment and hurt people, and it's irresponsible. It's actuarially unfair, as I'd like to say. So, the very first thing that I would say that a community association would have to do is establish a uniform collection policy. And if you want to establish a uniform collection policy, you could do it and put it in your rules and regulations, but make sure that nothing that you put in your uniform collection policy contradicts your bylaws, your articles of incorporation, or your declaration. And if you're looking for a template on a uniform collection policy, I know the book for you. Look for the digital version so you can cut and paste it, put it in Word format, and then make it available to your board of directors to change and to craft as according to their sensibilities and sensitivities. So you got a good uniform collection policy, you got a good budget, you're good. Your things are a little better. And a board and a management company has to send courtesy notices. Now let me give you a little tip, boards of director managers. Never, don't ever put a courtesy letter or a demand letter in the name of your corporation. Put it in the name of the association and sign it for the board, because the board is a first-party creditor. Now, I'm not saying that a first-party creditor would not be subject to FDCPA violations, but definitely the odds are greater if it's a third-party vendor, and that third-party vendor, of course, would be the management company. As a matter of fact, in certain states, well, Maryland, every management company has to have a collections license, because it's been adjudicated that management companies are collections. So again, are you in violation of the FDCPA? Sometimes, because I saw a management company thought that they were clever, and they put the board's name on there, but then they put their logo, their phone number, and a whole bunch of disclaimers, which screams to me, I'm a debt collector. Which screams to me, find a lawyer and sue me. So wash all reference to your company off these things and just say it's for the board, from the board, so you have a little better chance of somebody. In this world, a ham sandwich could soothe the mustard, okay? So yeah, you know, a lot of people say to me, well, will I get sued? I say, hey, I can't tell if you're gonna get sued or not. It's part of the nature of this industry. People love to sue people. An important thing is to pull the mortgage from the docket. Look at the mortgage, do a simple mathematical calculation, see how much money is left, and you know the year that the mortgage was taken out, see what the interest rates are about then, do a comparative market analysis to see the value of the property, look for any other liens and encumbrances, and at the bottom of that funnel, you're gonna have the equity in the unit. So this way, when you're speaking to the owner, and the board, you know, a board member could speak to the owner and say, or you could advise the owner, you've got X amount, we believe you have X amount of equity in the property. You owe the association, you have 50,000 equity, and you owe the association 2. Why don't we work something out? Let's get off the hook here, okay?
Hey Mitch, I just want to add one thing, and I don't think I'm going to surprise anybody in the room at all when I say that there are homeowners in associations that don't know they're in associations, which is, yeah, see this, it's shocking, right? But at the same time, it's not. And so going back to my point earlier about educating the homeowners, a lot of times they don't understand what could happen if they don't pay their assessments. And so educating them through what Mitch is walking you through is very important. Nobody wants to lose all of that equity over a small assessment bill. And so I think that we start with education, and that's why the courtesy letter and the Collection Policy Act that Mitch was walking you through, that is like such a good place to start. Most homeowners don't even understand what's going on.
Right, most homeowners don't understand that their community association has a security interest in the assessments. And I'm talking about pretty sophisticated consumers. I'm talking about guys or ladies who would know. I have a friend of mine It was with Goldman Sachs, and I said, hey, if you don't pay your assessments, they can foreclose. He says, what are you talking about? Only the bank can foreclose. I said, don't pay your assessments a couple of weeks, see what happens. Don't believe me. And then, here, I asked you to find out who the bank was. There is a thing called a PUD rider and a condo rider. This allows you to notify the bank if the unit is delinquent. Because if a unit is delinquent in assessments, they are in breach of the mortgage agreement. So there may be some pressure from the banks, and in some cases, the banks actually pay. Because there's equity in the unit now, it's not 2008 anymore. The banks don't want you foreclosing on their property because you foreclose, it gets sold in a foreclosure sale, this guy quick claim deeds it to them. You don't know who owns this thing. It's owned by my grandmother, she's dead 30 years. You know, so you don't want that. So notify the lender, it's a very important thing. I do it in my collections process. Why can't the management company? And I'll tell you something else, management companies. One of the big problems that you all have is you don't make enough money. There's a way, there's a revenue generator. Go look, see how much it would cost to pull the PUD rider and to find out who the representative is, the mortgage servicer, charge the association whatever you want to charge them, and you've done serve the public interest, and you've made a few dollars for yourself. Start charging for these things. There's another thing you can do. You can make sure you charge the late fees and the late interest as prescribed in your governing documents. How many times have I seen ledgers where they just charge the late fees? They're just too lazy to charge the late interest or too scared, because late interest has to be charged as simple interest. And if it's not charged as simple interest, if you're not careful, you could go over the usury rates. And first of all, it's not legal. In certain states, they don't say whether it's simple interest or not. In Florida, they do. So I tell my crew simple interest is the way to go, because let's say the usury rate is 12% and you're compounding the interest. Next thing you know, you're over the usury rate, and that's a problem you don't want to have. Number one job for every manager. Well, number one job is client retention, right, Blake? Number two job is to see to it that your company earns money, all right? That's very important. We forget about that. We're so much in service to our communities, we forget to be in service to our shareholders. And it is maybe a baby boomer thing, but increasing shareholder value is very important. All right? Rental payments. I want you to talk about the rental payments. You're good about that.
Yeah, I'll talk about that, but if you don't mind, I want to just mention this homeowner assistance fund.
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
Yeah, does anybody know what the HAF is? Okay, a couple of hands raised and a couple of heads nodded, so I'll just...
And that's shameful. Everybody should know.
Well,
what
we're
the
going to
HAF
fix
is.
it right now.
We're gonna do that.
Let's fix that.
Okay, let's do it.
So with the COVID relief programs, there was 1.7 trillion, I think, is what the number was.
Yes, sir.
And 9.9 something billion of that went into the homeowner assistance fund. And then that money was then distributed to different states, territories, and I think even some of the tribes received money for that. What that fund is to help homeowners make mortgage payments, make any other real estate obligations that they have, one of those being assessments for the association. And so if you've got homeowners that are struggling or going through something and they need some assistance, they can turn to the HAF and they can get funding that way. Mitch, at your company, you received something as it relates to the HAF?
We get 2 inches of checks a day.
So it's a real thing, it's a real fund, there's lots of money in it, and it's great relief to homeowners. We had this, not to get super off topic, but we had this kind of gimmicky thing at our company a few years back. We call it Collections with Compassion. And it was all about understanding that the homeowner sometimes goes through hard times, and it's not all about them just not wanting to pay. Man, people fall into hard times sometimes, and understanding about the HAF and directing them to that and assisting them through a fund is a really cool thing. And what I would do if I were in your shoes right now and I didn't know about this, I would go learn about it for your state, what the resources are, where you can find access to the money, and start educating not just your board members, but all of your homeowners. It might be a great thing at an annual meeting to throw up a slide or whatever you do and talk about it. Create value to the community by providing things like this that they may not know about. At least half of you didn't know about it, so there's no way that your homeowners know about it. So just something that we want to throw out there. Now, moving on.
Rent.
Rented, yes, okay, I got it, I'm moving. If the unit is being rented, there's a couple of things that you can do, and we've done this at our company. One option is to have a standard lease agreement that every association unit that's being rented has to use. And that lease agreement would include a clause that talks about the association receiving the rental payments first to apply to the assessment before the owner or the investor gets their money. That's not always going to be the case, so at a minimum, what you would want is that clause that describes to the tenant and the landlord that, hey, assessments are paid first. And if you can't do that, then at least an agreement between you, landlord, and tenant would also suffice. But the main thing here, the important piece to this, is that the association receives its funds before the investor receives the rent. What you'll need to do, though, because the Division of Real Estate governs residential management in 99% of states, so there's going to be things you'll need to figure out for your state, but this is absolutely an option, and I would look into it for sure, especially with the higher percentage of rentals in associations.
This has already been established as a matter of statutory relief in 4 states. Florida, I believe, was the first one in 2009. Virginia, Utah, and for some strange reason, New York. I don't know, New York's not nice to anybody.
These are all the people from it.
You're right. We're not nice.
I lived in
We're
New
not
York, I
nice.
should say that.
No, you can't. Actions a management company should never take to collect. Oh, dude, this is being naughty. You get coal in your stockings.
Yeah.
Tell them about it.
So the notes that we were just going through, those are things to look at. Those are options for you. These are not options for you, okay? So number 1, do not post a list of delinquent owners in a public place. I kind of relate this to like the medieval times when they put people in the stocks in the middle of like the city center. We don't want to be doing that. So do not do that. And Mitch, I think we'll kind of run through this a little more quickly.
Okay, let's go. No shaming?
Yep, no shaming. I think for obvious reasons, we want to create harmony. Today's delinquent owner is what?
Tomorrow's board president.
Bingo.
And if they don't have a good collections journey, they will eat a bowl of crazy, wash it down with a glass of stupid, and terminate you. Okay? Next, oops, what did I just do?
You just turned off everything.
There we go. It's happened before, fat fingers, you know? Go ahead. Do not turn off water.
Yeah, let's talk about this one. Do not turn off water and or cable. I think that this is where we get a little bit of pushback from board members because they say, well, we have the right to do it. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I'm going to give you an example of why you should not. A lot of times TV, cable, phone, it's all tied into one. If you cut that service off and you're dealing with a homeowner that trips down the stairs, falls, something serious happens, they struggle to get to the phone, they need 911, they need emergency services, they pick up the phone and you don't want to be on the other side of that lawsuit, right? There's a million other things that we can do. That is not one of the things that we want to do. So think about this. And like Mitch said, what was it? The ketchup can sue the mustard or whatever.
A ham sandwich can sue another ham sandwich.
It doesn't matter, right? So just be careful with things like this and try to educate your board members on what could potentially happen. Of course, that's worst case scenario, but you need to understand that. Similar to the first two, no confrontations with delinquent owners. Let's keep things above board. Oh, ingress and egress. Similar to the example that I just gave. Let's say you've got a homeowner, it's a gated community, and you're going to prevent access to getting in and out. You're turning off the key fobs or the access to the gates. They've got diabetes, they go to their office, they realize they forgot their medication, the insulin, they need to get back to their property because they absolutely need it. They go to use the key fob, they go to enter the code gate to the gate, and it doesn't work. Now what?
Big problems.
Major problems. And I know that this might be 1 in 100, but I'm telling you right now that 1 in 100 is going to destroy you and it's going to affect you in a very, very bad way. So think about it. Think about all the things that you can do before these
Right.
issues. Do you want to mention anything there? Rich?
Yeah, talking about egress and egress, or whatever that's, in and out. If your HOA has one of these just fob systems, you can't do it. But if you have a gate system that's manned 24 hours, that's the best. Turn off their fob for the main gate and let them come in through the gate system. Now, I'll tell you a cute story quickly. Guy was driving around Fisher Island in Florida in his daddy's billionaire's Lamborghini, whatever, and they kept fining him. They kept fining him. What does a billionaire care? Finally, the attorney shut off his fob, and he had to go, the old man had to take his Rolls Royce through the maid's entrance. That ended it, right there. So make sure that if you do close off the fob, that there is a guard gate that will let people in. All right, you can inconvenience them, but you cannot hurt them. Please do not hurt people. Avoid confrontations wherever you can. Let's, they're gonna meet you in the street, and they're gonna, board members or managers, and they're gonna start, getting in your face. Say, look, the number one question, why'd you put me in collections? Your answer is, you put yourself in collections, okay? I need to talk to somebody. Well, I can't talk to you now if I were to talk to you, that would be a violation of your rights under the FDCPA. Call the attorney or call the collection agency. I can't talk to you, all right? And you're not turfing them, you're putting it in their self-interest. Ladies and gentlemen, in life, I've learned when you maneuver something into somebody else's self-interest, they're a lot more receptive to doing what you say, okay? All right, and let's ask a question.
Yeah, we just look. We all come to these events to learn from each other, and although Mitch and I are up here kind of presenting, we would like to hear from any of you on things that you have done or things that you would also bring up. We've got maybe just a few minutes for this, though, I think.
Yeah, just 2 minutes.
Yeah. So does anybody want to make a comment?
Anybody got any good ideas? No baseball bats.
Yeah, I had a joke about what they do in New York, but I can't.
No. We don't do that anymore.
We include a 6-month payment plan with our collection letters because people don't realize if they just skip a pizza a month, they might actually get out of debt very quickly.
That's right.
Yeah.
What state are you in?
Maryland, Virginia, and DC.
So in Maryland, you have to have a collector's license.
Yes, we do.
Anybody here from Colorado? Who's here from Colorado? Where? Did I see a Colorado person?
Our best friend.
God bless you, because Colorado, well, we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on. We got another little survey going on here.
Go ahead,
Okay. How we doing? Anybody got delinquencies in their association? Any amount? Okay, I figured that. When experiencing a delinquency, does your association go immediately to foreclose on a unit? No, that's it. So you do your first party notifications, and then what do you do if that doesn't work? Yeah, you have to do something. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. And let's talk about first party notifications.
Hey, Mitch, we got a comment.
Excuse me?
We got a comment.
Oh, we got a comment. That's
My
great.
friend Shelley.
Hi, Shelley.
We sent, we act,
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
a period, we try to give them a grace period.
Great.
And then we, after that grace period, we went to our attorney's office, who would then work with them, in reference to election. So we find that most of the times when we, inform them over to the attorney, and we have a rash of payments coming in, so.
Yeah, no, it works. It works, of course. First party notifications I'd like to get on. This is what management companies have to do. It's called, very fancy word is condition precedent. Before you could do one thing, you need to do another thing. For instance, Colorado is the most condition precedent state heavy that I can think of. And that is why in Colorado, in my book, I did a checklist for Colorado. You have to send out a uniform collection policy. You have to send out a request to get on a payment plan. You have to do so many things. In Florida, they don't have that many condition precedents except for what is known as a NOLA, Notice of Late Assessments and Assigned affidavit, which allows the attorneys to collect their fees. But one of the things, the first thing should be the courtesy notices, and they should be sent out as prescribed in a uniform collection policy. That's all there is to it. Then, of course, there's a board vote. Always have a board, if you can get together, vote and pass a resolution. We're going to get these guys in the collections. The other day, I let somebody, a board member, into my portal, and he just put everybody in the collections. I had to pull them all out. He was just, don't let board members into your portal. Thresholds, set thresholds. How much is it delinquent before we do something? All right, you send your letters, you're nice, you're kind, you're gentle, but enough is enough. Personally, if you're on a monthly pay period or even a quarterly pay period, if you're delinquent 2 months, I think that you would be doing a service to the association and to the debtor to start collections, because collections delayed are collections denied. And what happens is if you let people kick that can down the road, they're going to get into such trouble. They're going to be owing $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 that they'll never get out of. So again, you're not doing them a service by not putting them into collections one way or the other. Okay? Payment plan offerings, notices of delinquency, statements, and statements that have broken out the charges. What are assessments? What are special assessments? What are fines and violations? What are previous legal fees? What are, whatever is on the ledger that is legally been put on the ledger. A final warning letter, and I want to talk about the final warning letter and the FDCPA, Regulation F. And I'm going to talk about the opt-out language. It so happens that the FDCPA was created in 1977, and they did not contemplate emails and texts at all. So now, on your very final letter, and you will find it in the book, and I also recommend getting the digital copy of the book so you can cut and paste it, you will find a template, a final warning letter language. And that language tells people how they can opt out of emails. And you will also send them the book, you'll find an opt-out notice. So this allows for communication to be opt-out for emails. Guess what the owners do when they get an opt-out language? A right-hand, left-hand garbage can, okay? They don't opt out, they never opt out. I've never gotten one opt-out letter, ever. And you know why? Because they don't read their mail. But when they don't opt out, they by default opted in, okay? So that's a very important, again, the language is in the book, the language is in the digital copy.
Hey, I just wanted to ask really quick, how many of your associations have a uniform collection policy?
That's a good question.
Okay, that's really good. If you didn't raise your hand, it's because you didn't want to or you don't have one, and that's fine. But I would absolutely recommend getting down to business with your boards. This will help you in the long run, it will help them in the long run, and it will help your homeowners in the long run. Tremendous value comes out when you've got a clear plan and a pathway to success. This perfectly describes to everybody what's going to happen. And everything that Mitch just showed you on that last slide is actually super important. And if you missed it, it's in the book.
Okay. I want to start with when you've done all of your first party notifications and you've done everything you can, you've suspended them from voting, you've done everything you can, you come to a fork to a road. And when you come to a fork in a road, what do?
Well, Mitch, you take it.
There you go, you take it. So we have to decide what the fork in the road is. So I've come up with a little bit of a hierarchy, all right? Right here in the April 1 edition, cover story, CAI, and recently Dawn Bauman herself in social media has said, and I quote, foreclosure should be the last step in the collections of a debt. I have a case here from the Supreme Court called Obdusky versus McCarthy, which actually says that non-judicial foreclosures are not the collection of debt. It's security interest enforcement. So I'm not taking security interest enforcement and foreclosure off the table, but I'm putting it where it should be. And there's a hierarchy, all right? And the hierarchy is this. First of all, you discuss everything with your board of directors. You discuss the security interest, you discuss the equity, you discuss the position. Is there an owner in there? Is there a service member in there? Are there young people in there? You know the fact pattern, because all too often in this life and in this world, people just act without getting the facts. The facts aren't important, but you need the fact pattern. Get the fact pattern. The next thing you do, well, if you want, you can engage a collections company or an agency to reach out, to engage, to talk, to work it out. Don't put them out, work it out. People are down. When people are down, what do? You raise them up. You don't put your foot on their back. You don't accelerate assessments. Somebody's down. Acceleration is one of the worst things I've ever heard of. The only time you should ever accelerate assessments is if the bank is about to foreclose. So maybe there'll be a surplus or something, and the lien gets bigger. But
I just want to, from the management, like from, like my angle on this side, the way that I view it, an agency can help do the right thing for the homeowners. And I am not lying when I say that we've received thank you letters from homeowners that have been delinquent that didn't know it, and they didn't know how they were going to get out of the situation that they were in. And so after going through the process, they come back to us and they say, hey, thank you. I could forward everybody in this room those emails. Mitch, you've seen them, right?
I've seen them. We have a wall full of them in my office.
And so it's really crazy. I think that there's such a bad connotation with delinquencies and collections agencies and attorneys. But when you walk them through the proper steps, they understand what's going on, you're going to collect their money. They're going to be back to full, and all will be well again. So I don't know. From our side, we wouldn't do it any other way.
Right. Well, getting back to the hierarchy. Again, I don't take foreclosure, security interest enforcement off the table. So if your first party notifications don't work, your engagement with the owner doesn't work, phone calls, emails, texts, credit bureau, whatever it doesn't work, well, then you've got to take it to an attorney. This is when you need an attorney. Because attorneys are involved, again, as I mentioned, non-judicial. That's not the act of foreclosing. No phone calls are made. No outreach is done. Payment plans are hardly ever done. And in California, a lien and trustee service, and in some certain states, there's a quasi-judicial foreclosure. The difference between a judicial foreclosure and a quasi-judicial foreclosure is that a quasi-judicial foreclosure is you need an attorney to get permission to take it to the sheriff to do a foreclosure. I have been I've been reading that Oldusky case, and Sotomayor had the best opinion. They all unanimous, liberals and conservatives, voted for this unanimously, which is amazing. But Sotomayor must live in an HOA. Definitely, Sotomayor lives in an HOA, and she says civil seizure, although it may result in the recovery of money, it is not the act of collections. All right, and she was very clear on it, and I urge you all to read that report. But if you got to do a judicial foreclosure, I'm going to tell you what I'd like you to do. Every time you do a judicial foreclosure, tell your attorney or ask your attorney if it makes sense. Don't tell your attorney. I don't tell you what to tell your attorney. There's got to be an attorney in here somewhere. I know one. But what you do is you ask your attorney, can you foreclose? Can you put in a account for foreclosure? And account for a money judgment. So at least when it goes through, at least you have something. Money judgments to me are useless for the most part.
Yeah, not a huge fan. It typically satisfies the lien, and it's not something I'm a major fan of.
We're going to go into that in a minute. We're almost at our last slides. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're doing great. All right, bankruptcy. Management companies. Did I not tell you about making money? You like making money? Did you know that if somebody files for bankruptcy, you don't need an attorney to do a proof of claim? It's an estoppel. That's all it is. And you could have somebody in your office look and see if there is a bankruptcy, can we do the proof of claim? And whatever your attorney charges, charge half and you're a hero. Okay? Stop giving money away. All right? Again, when it comes to Chapter 7 and 13. I don't want to go through the whole thing. If it's a 7, it's only 3 to 5 weeks. If it's a 13, it can be 3 to 5 years, and you may want to take the unit out by an injunctive stay of relief. I don't know. That's legal talk. I don't know that. All right. Statute of, oops, sorry. Go back. Back.
Well, while you figure that out, I can talk about the SCRA, which you saw, and there was kind of the, it's the Civil Member, Service Member Act, which basically says the way that we handle service members is a little bit different. The things that you can and cannot do for them, which, by the way, any service members that's in the room at all?
God bless.
Hey, thank you, brother, and anybody else. But the way that we approach them is slightly different, and I think that the FDCPA plays into that. So be very careful on that. And then, is there anything else I wanted to say about SCRA?
The SCRA, 6% interest, no default loan, no default judgments, and no non-judicial foreclosures.
That's exactly right. See, Mitch is the guy that reads these reports and these Olofsky court cases like that. You see, I mean, see.
I got no life. I have no life. I read court cases. I'm married 50 years. I've got no grandchildren. I don't have a pet, and my wife just wants to shop. So. All right, we're almost there. Here we go. Let's get back to it. And never take. Come on. Let's. Ooh, boy, this was a long presentation. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay. Statute of Limitations. All right, Service Members Relief Act. By the way, the book covers the Service Members Relief Act. 6% interest, you can't charge it no matter what your governing documents say. No more than 6% interest. Okay? One thing that I do want to talk about is the statute of limitations. This is a great question to ask a lawyer, because they go, I don't know. It depends, because, and I know I don't give legal opinions, and I'm not going to give a legal opinion, because the unlicensed practice of law is a third-degree felony, and I'm too pretty for jail, okay? So I'm going to say that I believe, this is what I believe, some lawyers don't, believe that 5 years, that's the end of it, statute of limitations. I don't know, because then I've seen ledgers come in, and the lawyers say, oh, they didn't pay from 10 years ago, you know, bifurcate that, cut it off, get rid of it. Nonsense. My opinion, and the opinion of some other good attorneys, is that every time the association charges the debt, it tolls the debt. Now, take that and go back to an attorney and have an argument with that. And I'm not going to discuss it anymore, because this is not going to be a debate, because I didn't go to school long enough to have that debate. Restrictive endorsements. I was going to talk about Illinois. Anybody here from Illinois? Good. What a crazy state.
We still love them, though.
We love them. We love every state. But the thing is, Illinois has an unusual process where you can evict people from their homes, and then rent their homes out, and it's just so messy. And then they have all sorts of restrictive laws. And Massachusetts and Illinois, you know, it's tough.
I'll talk about restrictive endorsements. Just
Please.
Part of this is understanding your state statutes, and if you don't know them or you're kind of new to the industry, there's a great resource list on the CAI online site for your state. It'll have direct links to your statutes that apply to the association management world that we're in. Why do I have the problems with the mic? What did I do? Anyway,
I got here first.
Understand what those statutes are as it relates to restrictive endorsements, because if you deposit or receive a check that's marked paid in full, guess what? It's paid in full. And they might not necessarily be paid in full, but legally they are. And so you've got to be very careful of that. And just a side note again, from the management side perspective, whatever you're using, whatever program you're using, make sure that whatever switch you've got to turn on or turn off or button you've got to click, so that those payments, once turned over to the agency or whoever, they can no longer make payments online, through check, if you're using lockbox systems. That's a very, very important thing that you do. If you're receiving payments when they're with an attorney or with a collections agency, you've got big problems on your hand. So take a note, circle it, star it, talk to your managers, or if you're the manager, make sure that you do not miss this step. I'm going a little off topic on the restrictive endorsement
No, it's
side,
important.
and more just talking about communicating with homeowners in general. You cannot communicate with them about their finances once they've been passed, and that threshold has been passed, and they're with an agency now, and you start telling them what they owe. Well, guess what? You might not quite know what they owe. And so if you tell them a certain amount, they pay that amount, you receive that payment, you're gonna have big problems on your hand. So from a management perspective, train your staff, train yourself to just stop communication on all financials and owing amounts once they've got to that point. Have I made it clear?
That's
Am I
pretty
beating a
good.
dead horse? Should I beat it more? Okay.
I'm telling you, that horse has been beat. Thank you. So this concludes our formal presentation. We wanted to leave a few minutes for people who would like to discuss some issues. We've got a man, Hetty, there we go. It's my friend Hetty.
You're talking about paying in full. What do you do when you use a lockbox? And all our payments come through lockbox.
Great question. First of all, should a unit go into collections, a file go into collections, you have to let the lockbox know. But we're living amongst human beings who make mistakes. For lockbox, everywhere in Florida, remember we had that issue in Florida about 10 years ago where restrictive endorsements came and then the legislature changed it? I remember in those days, if a lockbox took a payment, you had 90 days to return it.
But we don't look at every payment.
Yeah, I know, but again, that's all I got for you.
Okay.
You know, make sure it gets shut off, right? But there is a 90-day recourse, but you're absolutely right. From a pragmatic and practical point of view, will that help?
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just real quick, I'm also happy to chat with you after the fact. I think that there's probably something you would do like on the technical side that would make that possible. Not sure what you're using, but we can chat after if you want to, no problem. There was a hand over in the back, I saw. Oh, this side. How did I miss that?
Somebody asked
That
us
was
the
the complete
question.
opposite side of the room.
We're so lonely. I got to go back to my room. They don't want me at the booth.
Here's the bar.
The bar, yeah, I'll be at the bar.